Have you ever noticed how some women manage to become essential in a man's life without saying a single word? It's a silent, almost imperceptible, but profoundly effective phenomenon. While you think you're just spending time together, sharing moments, or helping with small things, they are without apparent effort, creating an emotional web that keeps you connected, investing more and more without realizing it. This process is not accidental. It's psychological, often unconscious, but the effect is real. Men find themselves emotionally trapped without understanding exactly how they got there. The first mechanism they use is what we can call selective presence. It's not about being available all the time, but about showing up at the moments that matter most, offering support, attention, or simply that listening ear that seems magical. This pattern creates a sense of value and rarity, as if each interaction were a prize, making their absence more impactful and their presence even more necessary. It's simple, but powerful. The human brain responds intensely to the perception of value and exclusivity. The second point is emotional microconnections. Small gestures, subtle glances, unexpected messages, or silent demonstrations of care accumulate over time. It's not about grand declarations of love. It's about details that create meaning and emotional remembrance. Every smile at the right moment, every unconditional support, every gesture that suggests understanding contributes to an emotional dependence that grows silently and naturally. Another aspect is the art of strategic emotional space. By maintaining a balance between closeness and distance, she creates the feeling that you need to constantly win her over. This psychological cycle causes a man to invest more and more energy trying to decipher signals, please, understand desires and intentions. The result? Without realizing it, you begin to value her presence more than your own freedom, because your brain associates moments of connection with emotional reward and effective security. And here is the most important detail. All of this is reinforced by the unspoken. Words can be interpreted, forgotten, or challenged. Silence and action, on the other hand, speak directly to the subconscious. A gesture, a choice of timing, or an expression of interest creates a pattern of emotional reward that is difficult to break. Men end up adapting, responding, investing, often without knowing exactly why. If you want to learn how to immediately identify when a woman is applying these silent techniques and how to protect yourself emotionally, click now, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, and discover the complete method to maintain control, awareness, and freedom in your relationships. Don't let emotional dependence be built at your expense. After understanding how silent presence and small gestures create emotional bonds, the next level is intermittent reward, a psychological technique that keeps a man emotionally attached without him realizing it. Unlike constant gestures, here the stimulus is irregular, unpredictable, and precisely for that reason, addictive. When she appears unexpectedly, offering attention, affection, or even a simple message, the brain registers this as a rare and valuable reward. This unpredictability activates the same system that makes us gamble on slot machines. We eagerly await the next reward, even knowing it may never come. The impact of this behavior is profound. Every time you invest emotionally and receive some kind of return, even a small one, your brain releases dopamine, creating an almost automatic cycle of dependence. You begin to seek more of her presence, more signs of approval, more moments of connection. Without realizing it, your decisions, your time, and your emotions begin to revolve around this intermittent reward, making you vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Another crucial aspect is the oscillation between closeness and distance. She will be close when you least expect it, and distant when you most desire attention. This contrast creates emotional tension, making moments of closeness even more valued. You begin to interpret any gesture or word from her as an important sign, increasing your sensitivity and emotional dependence. It's an invisible but incredibly efficient cycle because no one realizes they are being guided. Furthermore, she uses selective validation of your qualities. Subtle compliments, recognition at strategic moments, or special attention to small achievements reinforce the feeling of being understood and admired. This type of psychological reinforcement makes you associate your self-esteem and emotional satisfaction with her approval, further consolidating the dependence. The most subtle point is that this technique requires no apparent effort. There are no confrontations, fights, or direct pressure. Everything is silent, invisible, and psychologically refined. You find yourself trapped in a cycle of increasing emotional investment, while she maintains absolute control over when and how to offer rewards. The relationship becomes asymmetrical. You give much more than you receive, but you are unable to notice the dynamic until you are deeply involved. And this dynamic is reinforced by the fear of loss. The idea that her attention is rare, exclusive, and precious creates anxiety and insecurity. You begin to try harder, to adapt, to give in, all in the name of maintaining or regaining that attention. Without realizing it, your emotional value is measured by the amount of energy you invest in pleasing her, not by what you truly deserve. This chapter reinforces that understanding the signs and patterns is the only way to protect yourself emotionally. Knowing the intermittent reward cycle allows you to see the situation clearly, avoiding falling into the same cycle of dependence. After understanding intermittent reward, it's time to analyze how some women manage to manipulate emotions without saying a word. The scariest thing is that much of this happens in a totally subtle, almost imperceptible, but extremely effective way. Small gestures, glances, changes in tone of voice, or even simple physical presence can be enough to create a profound emotional impact. Every action or inaction is calculated, even unconsciously, to keep you emotionally connected. One of the most powerful mechanisms is the strategic use of silence. The absence of communication, when expected, generates anxiety, curiosity, and even guilt. You constantly find yourself trying to guess what she thinks, what she feels, and how she will react. This type of silent manipulation is so efficient because there are no direct confrontations, no accusations or clear requests. Still, you feel the need to adjust, please, and win back her affection. It's an invisible cycle of emotional pressure that becomes addictive. Another critical point is the control of small emotional victories. When you manage to elicit a smile, a laugh, or a compliment, you feel you've achieved something rare. These small successes reinforce the emotional investment, making you spend more time and energy reproducing these moments. This is what psychologists call small doses of positive reinforcement. Each victory is bait that keeps you hooked, even unconsciously, to the relationship. Silent manipulation also manifests itself through exploiting insecurities. She observes your vulnerabilities and uses subtleties to intensify her efforts to please you or keep you around. An indirect comment, a gesture of disapproval, or the simple absence of enough attention to perceive your importance activates automatic emotional responses, anxiety, fear of losing, and a desire to prove your worth. Without realizing it, you begin to measure your self-esteem and emotional satisfaction based on her reaction. Furthermore, this dynamic creates psychological dependence because you begin to associate moments of validation and affection with moments of personal achievement. Every gesture from her, even a small one, is interpreted as approval, while any sign of disinterest or distance is perceived as a threat. This constant balance of gains and losses strengthens the emotional bond and makes it difficult to break free from the cycle of manipulation. It is essential to understand that the absence of words does not mean the absence of influence. On the contrary, silent gestures and subtle behaviors often have more impact than open discussions because they leave room for you to interpret, imagine, and fill in the gaps on your own. This mental space is the fertile ground for emotional dependence, where every thought of yours revolves around pleasing, deciphering, or conquering. Finally, recognizing these patterns is the first step in breaking the cycle. By recognizing how emotions are being silently manipulated, you gain clarity and control over your own responses. It is an emotional self-protection skill that requires observation, awareness, and discipline, allowing you to maintain your autonomy and not get lost in the psychological labyrinth that is often not even declared. After understanding silent manipulation, it's time to explore how some women create invisible emotional triggers that keep you hooked on them without apparent effort. These triggers act like invisible wires, triggering automatic responses in you, even unconsciously, reinforcing emotional dependence and increasing your psychological investment in the relationship. One of the most subtle mechanisms is selective recognition. She observes your actions and meticulously chooses what to value. A gesture of affection, a helpful attitude, or a sincere compliment are highlighted and rewarded with attention, while other actions go unnoticed. This pattern makes you strive to repeat the behavior she approves of, creating a cycle of conditioned reward. Each compliment acts as a small dopamine injection, reinforcing the need for constant approval. Another powerful trigger is strategic emotional timing. She knows, consciously or unconsciously, when to move away or get closer to generate anxiety, anticipation, or euphoria. A message received after hours of waiting or an unexpected phone call after a difficult day activates intense emotional reactions, linking your sense of well-being to her behavior. It's a technique of intermittent reinforcement. You never know exactly when you'll receive attention or affection, making each positive moment even more addictive. The use of personal vulnerabilities is also an invisible trigger. She perceives your insecurities, fears, and desires and uses them subtly to shape your behavior. Small comments, glances, or gestures can awaken feelings of guilt, a desire for protection, or a wish to prove worth, causing you to invest emotionally without realizing it. This type of manipulation is effective because it doesn't require direct confrontation. It creates impact through your interpretation of each subtle signal. In addition, there is the pattern of emotional alternation. Moments of intense affection are followed by short periods of distance or coldness, creating an emotional contrast that reinforces your attention and energy to regain affection. This cycle of approach and withdrawal increases obsession and attention devoted to the partner, consolidating emotional dependence almost automatically. Another critical element is the normalization of silent expectation. She rarely verbalizes exactly what she wants or expects, but you internalize these expectations and adjust your behavior to meet them. Over time, this becomes a pattern. You're constantly trying to guess, satisfy, and prove your worth, even without receiving clear instructions. This continuous effort is the core of the emotional dependency created without words. Understanding these invisible triggers is essential to recognizing when you are being emotionally manipulated. By noticing the pattern of reinforcements, alternations, and silent expectations, you can regain control over your responses and maintain your autonomy. The key is awareness and emotional discipline, recognizing that your emotional investment should not be conditioned by subtle signals, but based on real reciprocity and genuine respect. After understanding the invisible triggers that create emotional dependency, it's time to reveal the next level, the manipulation of perceived value. Some women possess an almost instinctive ability to make you feel that everything depends on your effort to please them, even if you already do a lot. This psychological mechanism is silent but extremely powerful, as it causes you to invest more and more time, energy, and emotions in something that is rarely reciprocated. The first step is selective evaluation. She recognizes and reinforces your qualities strategically. When you behave according to her expectations, she reacts with praise, affection, or special attention. Each positive gesture of yours is transformed into emotional currency, increasing the feeling of reward and creating the impression that the relationship depends on your performance. This conditioned reinforcement works like a trap. You begin to measure your worth by how much she approves of and recognizes your actions. In parallel, there is subtle depreciation. Small comments, glances, or attitudes that diminish your achievements and opinions cause you to constantly seek approval. It's the psychological effect of always needing to achieve more. She doesn't need to be openly cruel. Just create enough doubt so that you feel compelled to demonstrate value repeatedly. The alternation between appreciation and depreciation creates a cycle of attention and desire that keeps you emotionally trapped. Another important factor is the control of attention. She decides when and how much time or energy she will dedicate to you, creating the feeling that your presence or affection is a privilege. This perception of scarcity increases the value you place on it, intensifying attachment and dedication. It works like a market trick. You desire more what seems difficult to obtain, even if it's not necessarily the most compatible person for you. Furthermore, the use of ambiguity amplifies the effect. She rarely clearly communicates her feelings or intentions, leaving you to interpret every gesture and word. This uncertainty is unconsciously manipulated so that you invest even more, trying to decipher signals and gain approval. It's a subtle mechanism that exploits the human need for predictability and emotional control. The key to this chapter is understanding that the emotional attachment you feel is not just a result of genuine love or interest, but of how your brain is conditioned through reinforcement and ambiguous signals. By recognizing this pattern, you begin to differentiate between genuine feelings and psychological strategies that make you invest more than you receive. In the previous chapter, we explored how the perception of value is manipulated to create emotional dependence. Now, let's go deeper. The power of silence. Some women possess a silent, almost instinctive ability to control emotions and behaviors simply through the absence of communication or specific actions. This mechanism doesn't actually need words. It works best when you try to interpret each gesture or lack thereof. Strategic silence creates expectation and anxiety, which are essential elements for keeping you emotionally engaged. When she doesn't immediately respond to messages or avoids meetings, you automatically try to compensate, seeking attention, approval, and connection. Your brain begins to associate any reaction from her, even the slightest, with a valuable reward. This psychological pattern is similar to intermittent reinforcement in behavioral psychology. Uncertainty makes you value each interaction even more. Another aspect of silence is the reinforcement of mystery. It allows you to fill in gaps with your own imagination, projecting intentions, feelings, and expectations. The human mind tends to overvalue what is unknown or uncertain, and this keeps you engaged in the emotional cycle. Every ambiguous gesture or unclear look is absorbed as an indication of interest or disinterest, keeping you trapped in the emotional trial and error process. Furthermore, silence can be used as a form of indirect control. When you act in a certain way expecting a positive reaction, she simply remains neutral. This emotional void makes you doubt yourself and intensifies the effort to please her. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible, but extremely effective cycle. You invest more and more energy trying to interpret signals and gain approval, while she remains in control of the situation without needing to do anything explicitly. Another important element is the creation of micro-rewards. A simple smile, a brief compliment, or a gesture of attention can be enough to reinforce the behavior she wants from you. The alternation between minimal attention and small signs of affection creates an addictive cycle, keeping you emotionally trapped without realizing it. This pattern is what transforms seemingly normal relationships into dynamics of silent dependence, where you're constantly trying to achieve something that you're already conditioned to give her power over your emotions. Emotional dependence doesn't need to be explicit or verbalized. In fact, the most effective methods are subtle, invisible, and psychological. You start acting without realizing that you are responding to carefully controlled stimuli, reinforced by silence, ambiguity, and micro-rewards. After understanding how silence and ambiguity work, it's now time to explore another powerful element of this dynamic: the creation of strategic closeness. Some women have the ability to make you feel indispensable in their lives, even if, in practice, you're just another piece in her emotional puzzle. This mechanism doesn't depend on grand gestures. Often it's subtle, but highly calculated actions that reinforce the feeling of importance and exclusivity. She might, for example, share small personal details, ask for your opinion in trivial situations, or include you in moments that seem significant. Each act creates a feeling of intimacy and connection, but there's a pattern. This closeness is never complete. She maintains enough distance so that you feel you need to work harder to be valued. This delicate balance between connection and distance makes you interpret each gesture as proof of genuine affection. The psychological phenomenon behind this is called intermittent emotional reinforcement. The human mind tends to cling more intensely when the rewards are unpredictable. When she selectively shows affection, attention, or interest, you begin to value each sign as something rare and precious. This generates a cycle in which you begin to interpret each emotional crumb as a sign that you're moving forward, when in reality, you are just being kept within her sphere of influence. It's as if you're always close, but never close enough. Always almost there, but never really arriving. This emotional tension creates a constant state of alert in the man, making him think, rethink, interpret, and reinterpret her every gesture. These women don't need to manipulate explicitly. They don't need to ask for anything. The simple feeling of emotional openness followed by withdrawal is enough to make you try harder. You start acting like someone who needs to prove their worth, even without her demanding it. And this silent effort is the fuel that keeps the cycle going. She doesn't need to control you. You control yourself so as not to lose the closeness you believe you've achieved. An example of this is when she shares a personal dilemma and makes you feel that her presence is a kind of safe haven. But this openness doesn't last long. Soon after, she withdraws, changes her tone, becomes colder or more distant. This contrast activates a deep psychological mechanism in you, the desire to restore what you felt for a few minutes. You think you need to be available, to be understanding, to be protective, to be the right guy. It is at this moment that many men begin to personalize the dynamic. They believe there is something unique between the two of them, as if they were chosen. But they don't realize that the same pattern has been repeated before and can be repeated again with another person. The power is not in the emotional content she offers, but in the way she distributes that content. Everything is calculated in time, not in gesture. The trap of closeness works because it activates an essential part of the male mind, the instinct for purpose. Men want to be useful, they want to solve problems, they want to be important. And when she allows you to be all of that, even for moments, it creates a sense of mission that is deeply addictive. You start acting as if you are indispensable, but in reality, the feeling of indispensability was created only to keep you emotionally trapped. The most intriguing thing is that, rationally, you know that something is out of balance. But emotionally, you don't want to cut that connection. You don't want to risk losing that rare moment when it seems special. And that's where emotional dependence takes hold. It's not about being with her. It's about not losing what you believe she awakens in you. The rule of this chapter is simple and brutal. Selective proximity creates emotional loyalty. And that's why so many men find themselves trapped in relationships where they receive very little, but give too much. They are not in love with her. They are in love with the version of themselves that she allows them to feel from time to time. Now, there's only one element left to complete this puzzle. What happens when she discovers that she already has you completely emotionally anchored? The answer lies in the last chapter, where everything is revealed without her needing to say anything. There's a silent, almost imperceptible moment when she realizes you are emotionally anchored. Not because you said so, not because you demonstrated it, but because your actions begin to follow a very clear pattern. You react more to her mood than to your own. And when that happens, something profoundly changes in the dynamic. She goes from offering emotional crumbs to managing your internal state as if adjusting the volume of song. It is at this point that the game reaches its peak. She already knows that she no longer needs to seem so available, so charming, so sweet. The closeness that was once carefully balanced between warmth and distance now begins to lean to one side only, that of strategic coldness. She reduces the intensity, diminishes the enthusiasm, disappears for hours or days, alters the tone, leaves conversations unfinished. None of this is accidental. It is a final test of confirmation that you are trapped not by what she gives, but by what you miss. While you try to decipher what has changed, she observes. She observes how you strive, how you try to restore the initial atmosphere, how you silently take the blame for a drop in energy that wasn't even your fault. This behavior reveals more than any words. She knows you are already emotionally conditioned. And when she realizes this, she begins to use distancing as a tool, not to punish, but to measure your emotional usefulness. This moment is devastating because the man believes he is fighting for the relationship, when in reality, he is fighting to recover a feeling. He thinks something has been lost between the two of them, but what has really been lost is his control over his own mind. She doesn't need to be cruel. She just needs to be absent at the exact moment. She just needs to not give you what you expect. She just needs to be inconsistent enough to keep him trapped in the search for the version of her that only appears when she wants to. And here is a truth that few admit. Women who dominate this game do not become deeply attached. They cling to the feeling of emotional power, not to the man, but to the effect he produces when he tries to deserve them. When it reaches this stage, the relationship ceases to be an exchange and becomes an emotional asymmetry. You give, she receives. You try, she observes. You bend, she evaluates. And when she realizes that this cycle is guaranteed, she decides the final destination. Keep you as an emotional piece, slowly distance yourself, or replace you with someone else who awakens something new. In all three alternatives, she remains in control, because whoever controls the pace controls the narrative. Final rule: when you depend on her affection, she decides the end of the story. And here's the part few men want to face. It's not that she's bad, manipulative, or cruel. It's that you gave her the power to dictate your emotional worth. And whoever dictates worth dictates destiny. If you've realized that much of this describes exactly what you're experiencing, then this is the moment to turn the tables. Don't continue offering your soul to someone who only delivers crumbs. Go back to yourself. Rebuild your strength. And remember, a man who understands his own mind never again becomes anyone's emotional prey. If this content opened your mind and helped you better understand this emotional game, don't let it pass. Take advantage now and subscribe to the channel, because there's much more in-depth content like this coming. Comment below what caught your attention the most. Your comment greatly helps the channel grow and motivates me to bring more videos like this. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. You can change someone's day with a simple click. And of course, leave a like so that YouTube delivers this content to more people.